Lind.
Robert Gibson, Arlington County DES, Transportation.
Kate Donahue, Forestry and Natural Resources Commission.
Chris Slatt with the Transportation Commission.
Margaret Chung, Principal, Arlington Garrison. Christy Saward, Co-President, Arlington Heights Civic Association. Christine Brittle, I'm with the Penrose Neighborhood Association.
I'm Heywan Kim. I'm with the Arlington Tech Advisory Committee on behalf of the parents. It's been a while. My son graduated.
I'm Jeff Chambers, Director of Design and Construction with Arlington Public Schools. I did want to just make a note of somebody who's conspicuously absent. Somebody who's been involved with the project in previous iterations as well as this iteration. But those who don't know, our Assistant Director of Design and Construction passed away on April 5th, sorry. Just thoughts to his family, and he was an integral part of this project and will continue to be so in our minds. So just wanted anybody who's been involved in the process and has seen his face and heard his wit and his calm demeanor, just letting you know why you aren't seeing him. Long illness, he succumbed. So wanted everybody to know so you weren't asking about it.
Steve Stricker, Project Manager with Arlington Public Schools.
And Ted Black, the Chair of the BLPC. I just want to thank you, Jeff, for sharing that, and condolences to Ben's wife and family and friends, but also to you guys, his colleagues at APS, and we were talking earlier, his colleagues on the county staff, because you guys work closely together on all these different projects, and sometimes there are disagreements that are legitimate. Just we have different missions, and we have to. And I know Ben and you have always been calming influences in a lot of different things, and Ben will be missed in his demeanor and the depth of the knowledge that he brought to the process. So I just want to acknowledge all of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted.
Cynthia Hillman with the School Board's Facility Advisory Committee.
Sarah Steinberger, Planning Commission. Thanks. Sort of. Jasmine McDuffie, Stantec.
Hi, you with Stantec.
Patrick Sham,
Lisa Stendal, APS.
Brian Sigwards, Arlington Heights Civic Association, other co-president.
Okay, and we've got some other folks and staff from the county and APS side on the call. Bethany, want to do a quick introduction?
Sure. Bethany Heim, Parks Department.
Okay, Renee.
Hi, good evening. Renee Harbor, APS.
Daryl.
Good afternoon, evening, everyone. Sorry, I was trying to email Heather. She let me know she's trying to get into the meeting. So, Brett, if you get a notification, if you can let her in. But I'm Daryl Johnson, Director of Strategic Outreach.
Thanks, Chris.
Hi, yes. Good evening, Chris Kreider, Urban Design and the Planning Division. And Jeff, I just want to echo that all of us at staff that have worked with Ben were absolutely heartbroken. He had a great sense of humor, and he was really a very intelligent person. And I enjoyed the time that we did get to work with him. So thank you. And we enjoy working with you too. So let's make this in his memory too, right? Let's put this together and let's make this project work. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Laura.
Laura Schaub, Urban Design.
Okay, Robert.
This is Rob Schiesel, growth slate transportation planners with APS.
Okay, looks like we have one PFRC member, Terry Prell. Terry, if you want to introduce yourself.
Terry Prell, I'm an at-large member of this committee. Thank you.
For introduction. Everybody should have the agenda. I think we're going to first start with a brief presentation from Olivia on the schedule and next steps before we turn it over to APS.
Really just going to provide a few updates on the schedule. This is our second joint PFRC BLPC meeting. We do have one more scheduled PFRC meeting coming up on May 17th. But before that, we have some virtual public meetings coming up during the lunch hour, scheduled on May 2nd and 3rd. And I think most of you will see an invite coming out for those items. And then on May 10th, we have the Form-Based Code Advisory Working Group meeting. That has been shifted from April 26th to this May 10th date. And then tentatively, the remaining commission meetings before the county board meeting on June 10th. And with that, I'll pass it over to APS for the presentation.
Thanks, Olivia. So Jasmine and I are going to team up on the presentation tonight. She's going to cover the site design updates as well as the building material updates. And then I'll cover the phasing. Jasmine, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you all for having me. We're going to start with some site design updates. We've been working with our team and with APS to make some updates to the site based on the feedback we received from all of you and working closely with the county. And so we want to share also some additional diagrams that help to convey information, site circulation being one of them. We're also taking a closer look at pedestrian safety on campus and put together a preliminary campus lighting plan. We also continue to look at bike rack locations, share with you. I'm working with the county on some refinements to the Columbia Pike Branch Library entrance. We've also been working closely with our civil engineer on the bioretention areas. So some of the areas and the definitions of those have been refined. We've added some additional trees to the campus. And we've also taken a look at the landscaping on the corner of 9th and South Highland Street. This is an overall campus site plan. We've enlarged every area of the campus plan, so I'm going to go to those and talk about those updates. So every area outlined in blue represents an enlarged plan area that we're going to review today. Before we get into those reviews, this is a campus circulation plan. The blue area represents the bus routes. The orange circles are representative of buses. I just want to clarify that the MPSA buses and the ACC buses have different departure and arrival times. You would never see the buses like that at the same time on campus, but we did want to show you those layouts. The lines in purple represent pedestrian paths. Both are surrounding the campus on South Highland Street, 7th, 9th, and South Washington Drive, but also some of the internal circulation paths between the garage, the existing ACC entrances, as well as the new ACC entrances. And we've also identified bicycle pathways, both on the surrounding campus, but also through campus, because this is going to be a curbless environment, and so bike going to be welcome on campus along with us, pedestrians. We started to look at ways of making the pedestrian experience here on campus safer. And so we're looking at the introduction of speed tables at areas where we would see pedestrian crossings happening on campus, but also looking at opportunities to identify those crossings for ADA with some truncated domes. The circulation paths occur both at the street locations where you have the entrances or vehicular entrances on campus, both at South Walter Drive and South Highland, but also at natural pedestrian path locations on campus that allow pedestrians to circulate both from the south end of the campus to north and also east. I mentioned we started to take a look at campus lighting. I just want to preface this with that we are still doing lighting calculations, so this is a preliminary layout of that lighting. The lighting in pink represents the county lighting standard that we would have on the main streets. And the blue dots represent the layout of pole lighting that we would identify on campus. In addition to pole lighting, we do have some locations where we feel it might be more appropriate to have building mounted lighting, and that's represented by the dashed red line. And so we were looking at all the pedestrian pathways being lit. So getting into the site plan, this is our first enlarged area. This is the corner of 9th Street here, and then on the bottom of the page is South Watchery Drive. So you see in the corner of the public library and the main entrance to the new career center. And so one thing you may have noticed is that we have additional trees along South Walter Reed. We had some larger spaces of trees previously, and so we've added some additional trees. We've also taken a closer look at the library plaza and have extended the pattern of the campus plaza patterning into that plaza and added some additional green space. We're also looking at adding some additional bike racks there, looking at some modified signage for the library. The image below is a section view. So if you were standing where that blue line is, looking towards the west, you see the image below. On the right side is the height of the career center at that location. And on the left side is the library. And then you see the scale of the trees and the buses, provide relative scale. The images on the right are precedent images. They give you an idea of the type of look and feel that we are looking at, but they don't represent the actual design of those spaces. So we're looking at bioretention areas that incorporate some seating, bioretention areas that are within those seating areas, and some planting. This is a three-dimensional view if you were standing at the library plaza looking towards the main entrance of the ACC. And so we're trying to show that there are some seating bollards that are spaced along that pedestrian pathway. And you see the scale of the building relative to the entrance portico of the library. This is an aerial view looking at the same entrance, both with and without a bus for scale. Our next area of enlarged plan area is the north end of the new ACC. Again, we filled in and added some additional trees along South Walter Drive. In this view, you see the 7th Street entrance, and the building continues to be pushed back from the edge of 7th Street. Provides an entrance plaza. There's some bike racks that are located along that entrance. There are also bike racks located along South Walter Drive and the dog relief area and additional bioretention and planting along the corner of South Walter Drive and 7th Avenue. 7th Street, rather. The area in orange is the child care lot. There's teen parenting program in early childhood. And again, precedent images on the right give you a feel for the types of seat walls and kind of aesthetic that we were looking at. These are some three-dimensional views. If you were standing on the corner of 7th Street in South Walter Reed, looking at the 7th Street entrance, on the right-hand, three-dimensional views. And the view on the left shows you looking down towards South Walter Reed, looking south. And the images on the below are the types of trees that we are envisioning on campus. The next view is an enlargement of the playfield. And you see the west side of the new ACC. One thing that you would notice is that we are continuing with the tree boss and plaza here, and then the definition of the pedestrian walkway with the bollards and benches. And you'll see that some three-dimensional renderings. These views on the right, again, present images, but show you kind of the look and feel of this tree boss that's immediately west of the new ACC. This is the same view in terms of plan, but providing some present images of what that concrete paving could be like in terms of changing the tonal color of the concrete along that curved environment. This is a three-dimensional view, an aerial view if you were kind of one of the drones looking from South Highland Street. The existing career center is on the right, and you see the southwest corner of the new career center in the distance. The large, this is the playfield on site. Same view with buses. This is a view if you were standing at the existing career center entrance, looking back towards the new ACC. So in the distance, you see the tree boss, and you see the screen wall of the automotive drive area. And there's a planter at the corner here that has a built-up seating area for students and pedestrians. This is a closer look at that tree box. And so the plan in the upper right corner shows you an enlargement of that plan. The blue lines represent the sections that are cut that show below. The first section here is represented here, and you can see through, it's cut through the automotive drive area, which is represented here, and there's a screen wall here with the tree box, shielding that area from view. This section is cut further down, cutting through the planter area. The views on the left show what that boss could be like with some plantings, with some furnishing. And the image on the lower part is a closer view of that planter area. This is a view at street view at the corner of South Highland looking back towards the new ACC. And you start to see the bioretention areas that are running along the site in front of the new ACC. Existing ACC, I'm sorry. And then some additional views. This is South Water Drive. This is the library. And these are some sections cutting through that pedestrian drive aisle for buses down below. Again, the scale of the existing ACC. Just cut here. This bottom section shows it further down. The existing ACC in the corner of the new ACC. Images on the left, again, are views looking from the existing ACC kind of overhang towards the new ACC. You see the field and the fencing, the 4-foot-high fencing along the field. If you stand a little further back, you see the bioretention areas. Some additional aerial views of that, same through the campus, with and without buses. And these are some proposed furnishings. Again, these are subject to change. We're still evaluating that with APS, but looking at a combination of kind of round seat bollards and rectangular seats. Kind of rock, natural furnishing pieces in the box. This is a large plan of the corner of the garage on South Highland Street and 9th. And in addition to providing larger canopy trees, we've introduced some smaller ornamental trees are indicated in these images here. A combination of taller trees and smaller trees provides some visual interest. We're also looking at including some additional trees here to provide some additional green space if you were to walk along this edge between garage towards South Highland Street. The next couple of slides are some images of proposed exterior materials, both for the new ACC and the garage. So we'll start with the new ACC. There's 3 columns of information. This first column is a description of the proposed material. The second column is an image of the material. And the third column is the proposed color. We provide that because images off the website don't always come in the colors that you want. The new ACC is a combination of masonry, 2 colors of masonry. There's also a concrete masonry water table, which is a low wall where we have storefront. We also have a combination of storefront and curtain wall throughout the space in terms of the window openings. And we have single skin metal panels, which formulate the material that you see along the top edge of the building. And that panel has a couple of different rib profiles that we're looking at. There are also some phenolic panels on the lower edge of this building that are adjacent to storefront openings. The material palette also includes perforated screen at the auto shop, as well as the proposed screen enclosures that are around the rooftop units on the roof of the new ACC. In terms of the garage and the existing ACC, same three columns of information. The garage is a combination of precast, metal screen panels, and curtain wall. And the new ACC, when we take off the existing shops, we do need to provide a new exterior wall. And that wall is a combination of a short water table of masonry with metal panels above. There are also some canopies, free-form canopies that are located at the garage at entrance doors.
Jasmine, you might want to also mention for those here in attendance, there are some boards at the front of the room that are the same as the slide, might be easier to see.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jasmine. All right, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the phasing plans. So we're showing there for reference an existing campus site plan as the campus is today. Our main project, of course, we're scheduled to start construction in January of next year. However, we do have a couple of smaller projects that we're going to be starting this summer in order to clear out the space for the footprint of the new facility. You want to go to the next slide, Jess? So we're calling those Phase 1A, Phase 1B. Phase 1A is the relocation of the Montessori Public School of Arlington play areas. Currently, those are on the northeast corner of the site. So those are going to be cleared out of that area and essentially moved to around the perimeter of the existing school. I will say for that work, we are showing a construction entrance off of 7th Street for the areas east of the Montessori. For the areas to the west of the Montessori, there is some demolition work and some artificial turf field work up on that side that will require us to use a couple of parking spaces along there as far as the impacts to the neighborhood while that work's going on. So there will be, at various times, a couple of parking spaces that are out of commission on the school side of the site. I would also point out on this particular plan that we're looking to start that area to the east of the school early in the springtime, actually somewhere around May 1st. Reason being is that area encompasses a natural grass field. So we want to give that field as much time as possible to grow in until that's turned over to the school in the fall of next year, or sorry, this year. In addition to the Montessori play area relocation, there's also some parking lot work. We're reconfiguring the existing parking lot, removing some islands, restriping. The reason we're doing that will be apparent on the next slide, which is the Fenwick demo slide, but let's stay on this slide for one quick second. The other thing I wanted to point out here is we're not demolishing the basketball court or the existing Montessori play areas. That'll actually happen once the contractor gets on site in January. So we're simply getting those new play areas ready to be used in the fall. That's it for this slide. Let's go to phase 1B. So phase 1B is the demolition of the Fenwick building. And from this slide, you can see the reconfigured parking lot. The relocatable classrooms stay during this phase. The parking counts, we actually gain a couple of parking spots. I think we have 150 on site now. We go up to 159 during this phase. And the reason being is we're able to remove some of the islands and do a little bit of restriping of the existing asphalt. You can see the Fenwick building surrounded by construction fencing there. There's a construction road, gates out onto South Walter Reed. So there really won't be any impact to school activities, pickup, drop off, etc. Wanted to also point out that during this time, starting in the summer and going through the end of the year, the county also has a water line replacement project in South Walter Reed. Timing of that is still a little bit TBD, but I think, I don't know, Rob, you can speak more to that, but essentially it's a 6-month project, June through December. So just to say there will be some disruption to the roadway there, not associated with our particular project, but as a precursor to our work going on, that water line work we're trying to get, or county's trying to get done before our project starts. You'll notice the existing bus loop for the Career Center turns into one-way traffic there because of our limits of disturbance for the Fenwick demo. And of course, we also lose the bus loop that services Montessori currently. So one of the reasons for the parking lot configuration is to reconfigure these bus loops too, so that they'll be functional both during the Fenwick demo project and during the larger Career Center project. You can see the the Montessori bus loop actually is a U-shaped bus loop coming in and off of Highland. And the existing ACC bus loop buses will enter on Highland and go out on to South Walter Reed. We are not looking to take any right-of-way during the Fenwick demo. The sidewalk there along the west side of South Walter Reed will remain open. And I think I mentioned the parking lot, slight increase in the number of spaces on site there. That's it for that phase. Let's go to phase 2, which is the main construction of the main building. I should mention too, I forgot to mention this up front, but you'll notice the draft watermark on all of these, and also the disclaimer under the phase description up top that the phasing and logistics are subject to change due to design progression, contractor input, unforeseen conditions. So although we think this is a very logical way to build things, obviously contractor means and methods are going to dictate some of that. Could also run into some unforeseen conditions that have an impact on schedule and phasing. So it's important to keep in mind, this is our best guess, our best shot at this time. So the new ACC building starts construction January, 2-year project. Be a mid-year move into the new building. The bus traffic flow is essentially the same as we looked at before. You will notice that with the limits of disturbance for this project, we have taken some additional parking. And to make up that parking, we'll be procuring additional off-site parking, hopefully at the ECDC garage where we have 100 spaces that we're leasing now. So we'd be looking to lease another 50 spaces there to make up the deficit that construction of the new building causes here. Other than, well, I will mention here, you can see the gray area along South Walter Reed, the frontage of our site. We are looking to take over the parking lane as well as the sidewalk on that side in order to essentially construct the building from Walter Reed if become necessary. So the maintenance of traffic plan will indicate that. Obviously, we'll have crossings and signage that bring folks to the east side of South Walter Reed along the frontage of the project. Parking spaces actually go down to 103 from that 150 that we have now, so that's the 50, essential 50 space deficit. Wanted to point out also that there's 2 major projects going on in the right-of-way concurrent with the construction of this. One would be Complete Streets project that is redoing the streetscape from Columbia Pike all the way down to 6th Street intersection. That's essentially going to be removing the median, installing additional stormwater inlets and whatnot, modifications to the street, repaving, new striping and signage. There is,
just as a correction, it's going to be all within the street, not the streetscape itself.
Curb to curb.
Yeah.
Curb to curb. Thank you. There is some talk of APS managing the section between 9th Street and 7th Street. Since we're constructing along that frontage, there may make some sense for us to manage that to be able to better coordinate. We're still having conversations with the county about that. I will mention also, and Rob, thanks for the nuance there with streetscape and work within the curb to curb. The streetscape work that we'll be doing for each of our phases will be adjacent to the phase that we're doing. So for this particular phase with the construction of the new building, we would be doing streetscape essentially from the existing bus loop going north and around 7th Street, kind of around the side of the building there. The other work within the road that I wanted to mention, a couple things. One, there are some utilities that'll be coming off of South Highland, gas service, for example. So there will be some street cuts and work in the right-of-way during this period up on Highland for that. There's also a large 48-inch storm sewer line that currently cuts across our site at the corner of Highland and 9th Street. So in order for us in the next phase to install the garage, that storm line has to be relocated into the right-of-way. There's quite a bit of work coming down Highland and then down 9th to do that work. Sure, I haven't missed anything else here. is. Let's go to phase 3. Phase 3 is construction of the 4-story parking garage. So once the new ACC facility is constructed, we move the existing student and staffs from their existing location over. We also move the anything that's in the modular trailers over, so those will go away during this phase. But essentially, with the ACC empty, that allows us to peel off and demolish the shops on the backside, the south side of the building, so that we can go ahead and install the new 4-story parking garage. You can see the fencing that describes the construction limits of disturbance for this phase. In terms of parking, because we get rid of the relocatables, the parking number actually increases to 172 spots. So during this phase, we're basically back to the original condition plus another 20 spaces. Again, the streetscape associated with this phase will be the 9th Street and part of the Highland streetscape that will occur when the demolition of the existing career center and the 4-story parking garage is installed. Associated with that, we probably will need to take the parking lane adjacent to the garage in order to facilitate construction of that work. And again, in this phase, there's really no impact to student pickup drop-off. Of course, the bus traffic really doesn't change in this phase.
You have a note that the ACC pickup drop-off changes?
Yeah, I'm sorry, because obviously it does, because they are moving from their old building to their new. So you're right about that. So buses will actually enter off of South Walter Reed so that the buses are queuing properly and students are exiting buses on the proper side of the bus. And then those buses for the Career Center will be going out to Highland, either straight out, or they could also take the U through the MPSA bus loop.
And pickup and drop off would begin on South Walter Reed.
Correct. Good point. All right. Phase 3. Phase 4 is the construction of the synthetic field. So obviously, once the parking garage opens, we no longer have a need for the surface parking on site. That area becomes the final construction zone. We install the artificial turf. There will be a construction entrance off of Highland Street for that work. And obviously a bit of streetscape adjacent to that phase will occur at that time as well. We would also, at the end of the project, look to do any of our final mill and overlay of any of the perimeter streets around the campus. I think we have a final slide that shows the final condition. So that's it for phasing and our presentation tonight.
Thank you. I think now we're at the point for clarifying questions. So if there are questions specific to any information that was in the presentation we just heard, we'll raise those now. This is not the time for kind of discussion questions. So this would be truly clarifying, what does this mean? What is that? So on and so forth. We don't, yes?
I got one.
Okay. Can you reference a slide number?
Yeah, 34.
Great.
It came up on some other ones, but I'm sorry. This area Is that a building, a playing field? Could you just read, what is that again?
It'll just be open area at
So,
this point.
oh, okay, because usually white means a building, and on my little slide here, it's white with green around it and then dark green.
Yeah, at one point we had shown it as green grass because it would probably be put in grass, but it's not a field, it's just.
This open area, I guess.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we will have taken down the animal sciences area of that building on that corner. You can see on the earlier plans, you can see the dotted line. And the rest of it is that existing play area. It may very well exist as it currently does until we figure out what the change is for that building, rather than do something and then modify it again. So we will probably be close to the existing condition with the animal sciences removed, put into a condition that is stable and not looking like a construction zone.
Okay, then I have one follow-on question.
I'm sorry, before you go on, slide 14 seems to show something different for that area, so. It's hard to read, but it says milled playground area and asphalt playground area and covered area.
Are they existing?
Those are existing.
That's
Yeah.
existing.
Those
That's
are
how it is
existing.
now. That's existing, yeah, okay, thank you.
So that may be there. Again, we haven't fully developed that yet. Might be a future project.
Okay, so then maybe this is just premature, but I understood from your lighting thing that the lighting along that kind of path is going to be building lighting, but I questioned that if it's just going to be like green open space, why you can build in lighting. But if you're going to like on slide 14, I knew that space came up on other ones. If you're going to turn it into, an asphalt playground and my eyes aren't that
I
good.
don't think it's that it's turning into, I
It's
think
already
the
there.
current condition is that it's an asphalt playground.
Oh,
And there is a sidewalk that goes along there. We will probably continue the sidewalk over and allow people, and if you look at the circulation plan, we'll allow people to walk across there.
Oh, yeah, I'm not opposed to that at all. It's just, your picture on lighting has building lighting there as opposed to the stanchion, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
lighting.
It'll be dark sky compliant, building mounted lighting rather than pole mounted. It's
Yeah.
less maintenance to handle a building mounted light when you have a walkway right along the edge.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
But they won't be the wall packs that throw light straight out. They will be dark sky compliant.
So I'm going to ask my own clarifying question then. We can stay on slide 34 for this. I'm wondering why new grass field is not green. That is intended to be a grass field.
Correct.
Okay. Can we make it green? Or wherever these get shared next? Yeah. Thank you.
I have a question on slide 31. When you are doing that building construction from South Walter Drive and the sidewalk and the street parking go away, how many street parking spaces is that? And are you taking that into account for your rental spaces? Because I was at the library this morning and that area was almost completely parked, and I assume that is staff parking at the existing schools. So when that goes out of service, I think you're losing more spaces than you might be accounting for, but I wanted to check.
It's a good question. I don't have the parking count there.
Okay.
We can find out then.
I think that is something, and maybe you can confirm, but again, I was at the library this morning and that space looked almost completely parked, and I think it's a safe assumption that a lot of that.
What area are you from?
That gray strip along South Walter Drive.
Between the driveway
It's the
and
existing
7th Street.
field and green space now.
Some students also might park there.
Well, it's parked anyhow, so wherever all those people are parking, that space is not gonna exist.
Although if they're students, they wouldn't have access to it anyway. They have to find another street. Yeah,
right.
The challenge.
Following up on Cynthia's question, I have a vague recollection that there was an, I'm sorry, slide 33, there was this access road here, and there was going to be some sort of HVAC or something or other. Can you explain why you still have this, if this is not going to be HVAC or whatever, why do you need can you explain the purpose of the access road?
Are you talking about between the
Yeah,
garage
yeah.
and the existing ACC?
Yeah.
So that will be still a service area for both the garage and the existing building. There will be dumpsters back there, potentially transformers, that kind of thing for the garage.
And that would be further developed with the, after the board determines the actual fit out of the legacy ACC building. But it'll have all the service areas for cafeteria service, building equipment, materials, trash, all of that will be handled through there.
Ask a follow-up question, clarifying question about that. You said that the board determines. I thought by voting for the CIP, which had Montessori moving into Career Center, Legacy Career Center building, that was already voted on.
The
Is that
board
not
has
true?
set the policy that that's what they are planning on doing. I don't
Okay.
know that it's not yet in the CIP. That will be probably addressed in the next CIP. Specifically what it's going to be, they said that Montessori was going to move over there, but I don't know what grade levels. I don't know. We don't know exactly what's going in there. We just know that that's the position the board has taken is to make that change, but I don't think it's been
Voted on.
set in stone per se. I'd have to go back and look at the motion and how it was written because I don't recall, but I know they set the policy that that's what it is. But again, you know, till it's set in a CIP, I can't speak for the board as to what it's going to be.
And additionally, we've been very careful not to include the MPSA move as part of this use permit phase because there's any number of public input that's associated.
And that's probably going to become more clarified in the next CIP process. That would be my assumption. We've already done some studies with regard to what it could be, but again, until the board acts, I have no idea what exactly.
Can I do a follow-up to Christie's question? So yeah, thanks. So that's the, dumpsters and I'm guessing that will service the ACC and the garage. Could you just remind us again on 33, where are the dumpsters and for the new building and the MPSA, where are they going to be?
The MPSA dumpster is right off of Highland Street at the southwest corner of the building, which is right adjacent to the kitchen.
Okay, so
for the new ACC, it will be.
Can you use your little pointer thingy?
Yeah, she's pointing.
I'm
It's
sorry.
just hard to see.
Okay.
And for the new ACC, it will be east of the auto service entrance, so the back of the west side of the new ACC building, between the existing MPSA and the new building.
I have another question on slide 5 where you show the buses, and thank you so much for doing that. I understand the buses don't operate at the same time, but can you remind me how many buses currently service both ACC and MPSA?
14 ACC.
14 ACC.
I would be speaking out of school if I said that it's not a lot of buses.
It's fewer than 14.
Yeah.
And I've seen, I think, 17 on the thing.
Okay, yes. Yes.
I have a lot of questions about fencing.
Are these clarifying questions?
Yes.
We're going to talk about the construction. Okay.
Yes.
Fine. Yep. Okay.
Slide 15. I don't know if it's the perspective, but what is the size of that fence and does it go all the way around?
The majority of the field fencing is 4 feet tall. There will be an L shape that runs back along the driveway and as well as along Highland Street that will be higher. I believe we're looking at 10 feet.
That for soccer balls?
That's to keep balls from going into the street and hitting parked cars for the most part. It also will act as a backstop for kickball and other things that would be done in the corner of that or even T-ball.
So there's only one corner that needs that 10-foot fencing?
It's going to be on 2 corners and the entire length
Of Highland?
Highland.
So it'll be a U-shaped fence.
Yes.
Okay,
And then it steps down to 4 feet on the internal campus.
thanks.
And then my next fencing question is page 17. I'm a little, can you clarify what we're looking at? Why is there a fence? Or what is that a fence and what type of material is it and what is it fencing in?
That is the fence around the car service area where you have access to the auto tech and auto body programs. And there will also be the ability to put a few cars back there as well.
So will the cars come in from Walter Reed and then you'll open the fences to get people in?
They'll go in Walter Reed, follow that loop around, and then they would go into the service drive from the loading dock entry side.
And what type of material is that and how high is it?
Metal, perforated metal.
I'm sorry?
Perforated metal.
How high is it?
8 feet or so.
If it's a 6-foot person beside it, it's probably 10 feet. Depending how close they are.
Is that like a regular chain link fence or is it a decorative?
Decorative.
It's ornamental.
Ornamental.
Is the timing really set to start things on May 1st, which is 2 weeks?
Yeah, we may push that out a little bit, but that's kind of approximate. Try to get that natural grass turf in as quickly as we can.
Okay, and then definitely where the ball is starting to roll.
Yeah, our bid's out on the street back at the end of this month. So we're actually looking to start that work right after the 4th of July. There's some precursor work we have to do to move folks out, salvage some stuff, et cetera, to get the building ready for demolition.
Clarification for the timing of that. This isn't coming to planning commission until the following month. So is that able to start
Yes, they can apply for a demolition.
for that piece of it? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that wasn't contingent because that was not on the agenda for next week. Okay, thank you, or the following week rather.
We can't actually get the permit for demolition until the building is vacant because we need to have cut and cap approvals for cutting off the gas, cutting off the electricity and all of those things. And we can't do that until the people are out of the building. Because once you get the permit, it gets cut off.
Okay, that makes sense. Great. Yep.
I have a question about the fencing on slide 29. So the fencing on the west side of Montessori School, what's shown by the red lines with the little small circles. Can you explain what that fencing is and how much of it, because when I go over to the final condition, I don't see any fencing, so can you explain what of these are or how tall they are, which ones are temporary and which ones are permanent?
So the existing fencing on the west side of the Montessori building is 6 foot around the existing play areas there, Christie.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to continue all the way, basically, kind of around the corner on 7th, down kind of to the first border of the Montessori building.
Mhm.
And then 4-foot fencing is going to pick up kind of not quite to the east of the Montessori building, but to encapsulate those play areas further east as well as the natural grass field.
So there'll be a new, I know there's 4-foot fencing on the side of the t-ball field.
Yeah.
That it'll go around the entire field.
Correct.
And then, can you explain what of these fencings are, like even internal, are permanent condition versus temporary condition?
Well, during construction, they will probably utilize some type of construction fence, and then the final condition would be a chain link fence similar to what's there. In fact, on Highland, the existing 6-foot fence will be reused because it's a temporary condition and there's no sense putting in new. And then we were just continuing that condition around the primary area. And there will be gates in it for the community use and non-school hours in all of these areas.
What about the chain link all the way around the, what was the t-ball field? Will that be a permanent condition?
No, so our fence, our new fence, the 4-foot fence, actually moves up to capture the new natural grass field. There's an existing fence that is going to be in the way of construction of the new ACC. That'll stay in place until such time as we start construction in January for the new ACC. But that'll go away at that time.
And Steve, just as a reference, the red fencing that's shown on these phasing diagrams is construction fencing to ensure safety, noise, debris is managed.
It is, but it largely follows the final fencing layout as well.
So I'd like to move into substantive discussion. Last call for clarifying questions. Yep.
Real quick, slide 10, the ACC main entry. I see this nice covered kind of entrance area. It looks to me like the bike racks are actually like just outside that covered area. Is that accurate? The bike racks are uncovered?
Yes, some bike racks here. We're still studying the canopy a bit.
Thank you.
Just one final question on phasing for your 32 and 33. Is the southwest corner of the site, when is that done? It's shown as complete on 33. Is it actually done during that phase, or is it done during the previous phase?
So when you say southwest, Ted, you're referring to the parking?
Or southeast, down in.
Southeast.
Down in the, yeah.
So that area gets completed along with the parking garage?
So that means the actual work would be done during phase 3?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a little gray right now because we're trying to coordinate with Complete Streets, which is turning the corner.
Okay.
So I think the south side of Walter Reed could happen with the building, or it might happen with the garage. It's really, the whole intent is that we do the street construction adjacent to the construction it's at hand, so we aren't putting something in and then damaging it and having to replace it. And as the final condition gets put in, and then we aren't doing more construction on top of it.
So that's a good point, because mostly along 9th Street will be phase 3, but along South Walter Reed is phase 2. So yeah, Jeff's right,
there's some flexibility, I think, that we're going to look at from a permitting perspective, so that APS doesn't have to like rip something up when school's in session if they don't have to. So maintain as much functional sidewalk as possible, particularly while operations at the site and classes are going on, and then try to work with APS that works coordinated at more appropriate times, whether that's before or after the new ACC opens.
We're having with the
in those
county
areas
lots of conversations on this, because it's going to be very complicated, and we're trying to simplify it to the most, so that the community is not changing as the complete streets and/or the building are being constructed. We want to make sure that it's done once, done right, move on, community can use it. We'll, of course, have inconvenience until it's finished, but, we don't want to rip out what's there until we're actually working on it, with the exception of that one section of Walter Reed, because we have no choice but to build the building from Walter Reed side of the building.
All right. I think let's move into substantive discussion as far as that goes, in terms of identified topics, and I will open the floor. We are running behind, just so everyone knows, and this is stopping at 9. So in terms of topic areas, I do think, the updates that were presented this evening, that includes site circulation, trees, landscape, any of those kind of elements, any feedback on that, I want to hear from the group on. In terms of the construction phasing, we've talked a fair amount about that during clarifying questions. I think that's fair game for sort of more substantive feedback. It's very helpful in my view that we got sort of such a detailed perspective on the phasing. So thank you very much for including that in the presentation. I think that was very useful information, and one of the things that we had as a question mark from last time. So I appreciate the detailed information you provided for this meeting. Other topic areas to consider in general scope? Yes.
I realize now, I wonder if this is clarifying or not, but do you remember all the discussion last time began by, we had a student here about 9th Street and the parking, and it turned into, I know I said things like, I would like, wouldn't it be wonderful if APS could control 9th Street? And I didn't hear anything about, we get it like an update about.
Yeah, so why don't let's call that streetscape. We'll cover that in streetscape, and that will cover parking too. Okay. So that's fine. That can be its own topic. Anything else? All right. Let's jump into, so as far as updates, we've heard about site circulation, pedestrian safety, the lighting, bike rack locations, library entrance updates, bioretention area refinements, additional trees, and then landscaping on 9th South Highland Street. Any feedback directly on any of those specifically updated items? Yes.
Just appreciate that you've added all these trees. I think it's going to be very, very nice. Just have one comment, and it's really just kind of a general thing as you get into your plant selection and more along those lines. Is I think it's really important that students have a place to just kind of hang out and relax. And I know it's really difficult when you have to have playing fields and, all of these, but the little area you've got is really going for, sports and fields and this kind of thing. But maybe in this corner along 7th Street, just more relaxed, not so, maybe not quite so vertical. And it looks like you've got that on this map. I mean, maybe if there's some little benches in the shade or whatever, you could even have small outdoor classrooms, something like, people might use it in that way, or just to have lunch. It's just, I can, and I realize that this isn't exactly where you're at right now with the landscaping, but I think it looks really, really good. I would just kind of like to have a couple spots where you could have kind of that more natural type look where people could kids especially, could just kind of like hang out and enjoy it.
We've had 3 seniors at a recent meeting look at the plans and go through a lot of these slides and presentations. They think we have done that.
Oh, good.
So
okay.
From a student's perspective, they're very happy that we listened to them, because at one of the BLPC meetings in the past, they liked the fact that we turned the campus inside so that they had that green space, that private space that was because they have nothing like that now.
Right.
And I think they were that, plus the balconies or the terraces and all of those things. They feel that they have those special spaces. At the same time, we want to make sure safety, security, that things are visible and seen. If you notice, we're working with canopy trees as well as under trees, not shrubbery, because APS doesn't have a good record of maintaining that. Plus, they do get destroyed, and they also hide what's going on the ground. So that's one of the reasons we're looking at trees, because we think it's going to be much more successful to have shrubs and lower things in the bioretention basins. So we will have both, but I think in the overall usable space, the intent was, I think we're really focusing on the trees with our landscape.
Thank you.
Can we go to the slide that showed the fencing around the playing field? Sort of the back corner where I think Chrissy had the question about how high it was going to be. Yeah. Can we do a better job of screening that corner? I'm wondering if there's something just in terms of greenery. No one else is bothered by this. This is not like a hill I'm planning to die on, but I do think that there is an opportunity for some additional screening there. So it's not just sort of, and maybe it's the angle, but it feels like there's a lost opportunity there.
I think the other thing is we have to look at the color of the screening being white, and that it's not going to be white. And I think that's.
What color is it going to be?
Typically, we use black because it kind of disappears. Black or brown kind of disappears much more than the white does. We also want to make sure that we have visibility from the street to the field. So we will be looking at that. But yeah, that's a good comment, just to make sure. But yeah, I don't like where that drone was taking that picture.
Yeah, fair enough.
So to piggyback off of that, I'm hoping that that field is temporary because it's not a legal size field for any sport. And so if it is, then as beautiful as the trees are and everything, if that's gonna be it just seems a little bit of a waste in a sense.
The intent there is that if, as the board has currently indicated with Montessori moving into the existing ACC, and we put in another full-size field where the MPSA building is, that field will probably be designated for playground space for the MPSA or their phys ed space for the MPSA. So it would be able to be utilized as a non-regulation field.
So that is the configuration of the field. It will be that size. That's what it is. Okay.
It's basically, if things happen the way the board has indicated, we will have two synthetic turf fields on this site. One would be regulation and one is.
Chrissy.
With respect to sidewalk and streetscape, we would like to see a final use permit that actually includes proper streetscaping around the entire Career Center site, including on the north side of South Highland. And the part of South Highland that you're adjacent to MIPSA, because we believe this is the time to do it. And the problem is you have a 6-foot fence next to a 2 feet wide sidewalk, and it's not compliant with anything, and it's not appropriate for how many students are going to be on this site. So I know the use permit as it currently is doesn't touch this area as far as streetscape and proper sidewalks, and we feel very strongly that it should, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. I've been going on the assumption that MIPSA is going to move and that the board, I know there wasn't money for it yet, but the board approved that. But if that's not the case, right now the final use permit has to have, should have, or we believe must have, proper sidewalks and streetscaping all around it. Otherwise, it's not a full use permit. That's my comment. And also, I'm not crazy about that 6-foot fence, especially something next to a 2-foot wide sidewalk is really bad.
I think the existing streetscapes, at least a 4-foot wide sidewalk and a planting strip, and then
I'm pretty sure it's 2 feet wide.
Okay, we'll check.
Okay.
So going back to the fence next to this new turf field, that 10-foot fence, I want to say I'm not crazy about that. Like you, I know it's not a regulation field for anything, and I'm trying to envision why we need that high fence there. It feels to me very unattractive, and Christy, we haven't talked about this. And I'm in Penrose. I don't know how Arlington.
I will say that
I'm just saying it feels realistically. I don't see what sport is being played there that requires a 10-foot fence.
PE classes.
What are they doing in PE class? They
all
kickball,
kinds of sports.
they soccer, they frisbee, they do it
Even
all.
if it's not a regulation field, they do play all kinds of sports.
I don't love a 10-foot
Frisbee.
fence, but I will say that walking TJ every single day, I'm so glad they put up that fence because every time I was like, I'm gonna get hit in the head by a ball.
And for clarification, they are doing the 5-foot planting strip and 8-foot wide sidewalk, and then I think it's close to 8-foot planted buffer before you get to the fence. So as a pedestrian, you're not immediately against the fence.
Yeah, and
Last
our-
thing you hear, balls whacking against the fence. as
Yeah, and
you
our risk
walk by.
management will require us to put a higher fence, whether it's 8 feet, whether it's 10 feet, whether it's 12 feet.
And like you noted a moment ago, it's going to be a see-through fence. The
Correct.
picture you're showing looks like a wall,
Yeah.
and that's part
Now,
of it.
white
It's
is not helpful, but,
Yeah.
you know, when it's a darker color, I mean, if you ever go look, even the 4-foot fence around Fleet, it's even a denser fence, but it's pretty invisible in the sense of walking by there because it's black or brown. For some reason, visually, it doesn't show up as much.
Anything else in terms of the items that were covered on updates?
Have they determined what kind of turf it is yet? Is it gonna be front turf or?
That's a non-infill type.
Yeah.
I have a question about the garage and the use permit.
Okay.
So the use permit, does it have a condition that the materials are not, what is the word where you cut things out because you ran out of money? Engineered, value engineered. I'm wondering, I would like something in the use permit condition that says the panels are part of the structure and are not something that can be valued engineered out. Otherwise, you're gonna get the same, you're just gonna get plain old garage. We want to make sure it has high architectural standards and looks nice in the campus. And so I would like the use permit to explicitly say that that is part of the structure, not just ornamental.
Rob, it's my understanding that whatever's in the use permit and gets approved by the board is generally the look that we have to
Yeah, I mean,
maintain.
the use permit is pretty binding along with all the documents that you see. There does have to be latitude for final design and engineering and things like that. We'll discuss your concerns internally and see if the existing process addresses your concerns or if additional things need to be.
Because that's my understanding about the use permit as currently written, currently drafted, that not an architectural part of the garage.
No, I mean, typically that, depending on how much the change is, if it was completely removed, so let's say you just went to the concrete, it would likely trigger what's called a major use permit amendment, which requires county board action.
Okay, well, let's write that in the final use permit, that if it's taken out, it requires some sort of, I mean, I just want to get rid of these maybe and likelies. that if there's any change, that it would trigger a use permit. Did you just say use permit
Amendment.
amendment?
Okay.
Just following up on my question from earlier, I would encourage if bike racks can be covered, if there is readily adjacent canopy or that sort of thing, it makes a big difference every time it rains on my son's bike at TJ Middle School and he comes home, it triggers a new round of complaining about having a wet seat. So it's just one of those little details that doesn't cost tons of money, but moves the needle there on helping our kids take active and sustainable transportation to and from school.
I'm gonna, Chrissy, last question. I'm gonna move on to next topic. I wanted to talk about the 9th Street parking.
I just had a very general question.
Okay, all right. Can we have an update on the discussion from last time with regards to possible parking control for APS on the 9th Street spots? What maybe could be done so we could have that eventually reserved for students? Is there an update?
So we've looked at the county policies as it relates to sort of privatizing our streets for a use. The county does not typically do that. Actually, we do have some cases where we're working with APS to close streets time set for morning arrival and departure, but not permanently. We apply those rules to private developments as we do with APS. There are opportunities for the county through a broad policy change, which is not part of this process, to look at how student parking is addressed adjacent to schools across the county so that the decision is equitable. But it's not likely that this use permit process would determine the overall and continued public or private use of 9th Street.
Oh, sure. I was gonna ask a question. You go. Yeah.
It was related to this.
Well, yeah.
Oh, go.
Okay. Just in terms of, I appreciate that because I think that what issues we're seeing with regards to the career center, student parking there, are probably concerns that if we were having these conversations about student parking at several of our other schools, are probably things that are paralleled elsewhere. And so it would make sense, from my perspective, to potentially have that larger policy conversation. And that's something that I understand is out of scope of the here and now, but is something that I would be interested in advancing further, and as it has broader implications across the county and with our other schools. That was the comment I was going to make. Yes.
And I think I was going to share this, which is we just got an answer here saying either broader or this is not appropriate. But I would hate to think that we'll never hear about it again, or it's dead, or it's the file door is, some kind of door is closed. So people who would want to pursue that or think that, there should be more attention. I mean, what would you say to them in terms of, there could be, I'm not sure exactly when you say want to be equitable across the county and issues, whatever, is some group studying this right now? How would someone follow up to see if there is any ability to, like you said, someone, I guess, is looking about whether at certain times of day it might be closed, but that's not going to help the students who want to park there all day. Anyway, if you wanted to follow up on either countywide or further whatever, or just it's off the table, we're just not going to now, because it's not part of this use.
So I'm going to give a broad answer to that, which may have a lot of caveats, and I won't go into those. But the way our work program for staff goes is that the county board directs the county manager to undertake certain studies and activities. This would likely be a broad parking study related to student use adjacent to schools, either directly adjacent or within some neighborhood adjacency. And that would have to be directed by the county board for staff to.
Okay, so I'm so sorry. I
engage
thought you were
across the
already looking at it. You're saying, so nobody's looking at it now. You're just saying that from your professional whatever, if there was an interest in this for equity, for whatever, it should be a countywide thing, and someone would have to convince the county board that they should tell you to go study this. So right now, nothing is happening. That's what I'm hearing you say now.
I think what I'm also hearing is that this is kind of the first time this conversation's maybe been raised, so this may be the inflection point by which it could start to be something. And I would probably start to if this is something you're interested in sort of pushing forward, I would maybe see how the school board felt on that topic, and then they could also push to back to the county board a little bit. I think that there certainly seemed like the students we heard from last time were interested in making this happen. So there are
I think it's, to be fair to past processes, I don't think this is the first time this issue has been raised. I believe that there was a public comment to this effect during the RPP residential permit parking process. That said, the scope of that process didn't include that, and it didn't, or decisions were made that the policies weren't changing in that direction. Not explicitly, but implicitly with the work that they were doing.
The difference, it seems for me, for the ACC is the area available to the school is so limited, and that one street is metered, which the only equivalent I can think of is maybe Washington Boulevard by W&L, but that's kind of far from the school. It's on the other side of the track and everything. And so the fact that 9th Street is metered, and so nobody wants to park there. And, it's such a tight area that it almost has like different implications for the ACC.
So there is a distinct difference between the, let's say, quasi-private use by students, dedicated use by students, and how we manage all of the streets around this campus. I do envision that as things change throughout the phasing of this project, there will be some changes to existing operations and street utilization, such as along the main building frontage on Walter Reed, you'll see new restrictions put in to allow pickup and drop off hours so that those spaces aren't used continuously. The spaces on 9th Street, depending on any number of factors, we may change the metering, we may change it from short-term to long-term, we may change it to different things. I think that staff is envisioning working with APS to tailor or consider tailoring all of the frontages around this campus to best support a combination of APS's uses and the broader public use.
Well, thank you for saying that, and I just want to align myself with her comment and to point out, because I did get more involved in this than I wanted to, but there are meters along Quincy Street in W&L, and they are empty. No one parks there. So it's a community asset that nobody uses because nobody's going to pay the meters. And I just wish there was some way that either, our signage, we don't want, commuters, whatever, but it's a sad thing. And so some people are coming in, oh, nobody uses this, so they want to take out all parking because nobody uses it. It's an asset that would be used if they didn't have the meters. I'm just.
Oh, and it also came up during the modality study, which went all the way to 2nd Street, which, we've said is not realistic in how people park for the school, because they're not going to go all the way to 2nd.
And these areas are just so proximate, to the school. So if someone needs to park or has to park and the meters, I mean, it is, so they go to the neighborhoods, right? It's just an asset that is not being used, and you guys are creative. There's got to be a better way to do it.
While we're talking about 9th, has there been any update on potential changes to bike operations on 9th Street? Make sure this parking garage doesn't make the 9th Street Bike Boulevard. no
We are
longer
in
bike boulevard?
conversations with the
Still in
county. We're
conversation.
talking about what that's going to be. I don't think there's a resolution as to where we're yet, but there's a lot of conversation, and I will say that APS has requested that we could use that for student parking. All of that's in the mix. All of that's being conversed. I don't know where we're going to end up, but somewhere it's going to end up in the use permit on the direction it's going to be taking.
But I do think we are taking a very detailed look at 9th Street. And we are looking at it in a manner that can support changes in operation, either for bikes or pickup and drop off or parking. And hopefully the result will be something that is a roadway that is more flexible and supportive of more modes.
And if we find things that don't work, whatever is constructed will be able to be modified in multiple ways.
Plenty of pavement, that's for sure.
Yeah, Chrissy.
Yeah, I have a question about, or I wanted to discuss the use permit process generally. Is that okay to talk about that now?
Yeah, let's move to that and then we'll pull that into construction. I actually view kind of the construction conversation, that could all be part of that. So let's transition to that conversation with your question.
So I was kind of taken aback a little bit by Rob's comment about we would need much more community input in order to move MITSA over and demolish Patrick Henry building. I feel like there's been, oh my gosh, so much community involvement since 2017 and beyond. What I would really like to see, because to me, this is not what I want to see as a final condition. What I want to see as a final condition, and I understand this would be a temporary condition for a long time, but a final condition should be this building gone and green space or something, and MIPSA moved over here, and the entire campus finished with appropriate streetscaping. Because this final condition, it doesn't follow Arlington County's biophilic requirements, and we've lost green space. I mean, I'm not against it. I would just like to see it I would like to see a true use permit that at the end of the day shows what we're all expecting. I understand you don't have the money for it, but you can file a use permit and extend it. To me, that's going to save you money than whatever X number of years down the road, we have to do this all over again to move MIPSA. And we've talked about that. We've talked about this forever. And I don't think there's any amount of community involvement you need to have a final use permit that shows a true final condition.
I think that my understanding is whatever we show in the use permit has to, before we basically have the occupancy at the site or get our final occupancy at the site, we have to meet the conditions of the use permit. And I think the use permit is being, as I understand it, has to be tailored to the work that you're doing. I agree that the campus is not complete, and I think the board has acknowledged that the campus is not complete, and we would be going for an amendment to the use permit when the board defines what that space is going to be. We don't know whether it's going to be a turf field. We don't know if it's going to be a synthetic field. We don't know if it's going to be park and playground. You know, we don't know what that space is going to be yet, and we don't have the funds to build it, number one, and nor do we have the funds to design it. So
is that an amendment to the use permit, or is that a future use permit that would stand alone after everything is done in like a decade?
No,
It could be either.
yeah,
Could be either.
and unlikely an amendment.
Unlikely an amendment.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
right now, it's my understanding the way this use permit's gonna be structured is that it's gonna have X number of kids at the existing Henry, plus the new student capacity at the new ACC.
Total maximum capacity.
And that number of students at Henry today might not be the number of students that go into a program at the the existing Career Center facility. And so that's probably one of the biggest changes of the use permit that would occur. While we're studying from a transportation perspective, the impacts of having additional students, additional parking needs and things like that, so that the garage is scaled to support potential growth and so on.
But my understanding from last meeting was that you already scaled the garage for, Steve, I thought you said this, you already scaled the garage for a MIPSA that went to 8th grade and included all the satellites, so I don't see that.
We scaled the garage for a maximum campus population. That doesn't say where the students are.
Right. I mean, can you please look into this issue? Because here's my fear. In 2027, when Wakefield is 140% occupied, it could be that those kids come to this empty building and MIPSA never moves and we never get the green space. We never get, the conditions that we're all kind of under the assumption. I would like something more, and I guess my understanding about what the use permit says and what you have to do for a use permit, maybe there's some confusion there. I kind of looked into this a lot, but my understanding is that you could write a use permit where this is the temporary condition. But otherwise, I do think that it's really asking us to trust APS with this, and when nobody does. I hate to be so.
And none of the actions that you've identified could be done by APS without actions by the county board or the school board. And so there would be, consistent with our policies, public process associated with those decision making.
Can you list what they are?
Well, I mean, you just listed the hypotheticals. Right now, this use permit only has 400 and some students at MPS, at the MPSA building, and 1,650 students at the new ACC building, and it will effectively zero out the use and the student population in the existing Career Center. And so any changes to put student population in the existing Career Center requires a use permit change. Any changes to demolish either, pretty much anything on the site will require a use permit amendment. And obviously all of those actions require funding on the school's side requiring.
Can you please clarify that would be a use permit amendment to move over MIPSA and demolish the Patrick Henry building? Because that's not my understanding. My understanding is that would be an entirely new use permit. Because for the use permit, this is the final condition. When this is done, the use permit is closed out.
So the use permit is not closed out. The use permit lives with forever until the county board either changes it and discontinues it, or all of the uses are removed from the site because all of our schools require a use permit.
The construction part of it. Okay. Well,
the construction activities get closed out as the conditions associated with construction activities are fulfilled and complete. Yes.
So let me just chime in as the other neighborhood rep who's here, unless there's someone participating on the phone who hasn't spoken. Like the Arlington Heights has concerns, Penrose also has concerns about this final state with very limited, to have 3 school buildings on the property with very limited green space. And the parking is scaled for assuming 2 buildings, but 3 buildings remain. And or 1 building stays there and is empty, or we don't know what the use is. I share those concerns. And when in the last process that many of us were engaged in, when there was significant community concern about that, APS came to us and said, no, we have a vision now. We're going to move MIPSA. This is the plan. And so that was said to reassure communities about this being a temporary end state. But what we're hearing in this room is, no, this is the end state that we're permitting. And so again, I have a lot of concerns about that. I recognize that we can't deal with it this moment, but I would be remiss not to say them.
One thing I will say, and because I just looked it up. And, of course, Jeff is correct. Future boards can do whatever they want. But in the CIP motion that was approved by the board in June, among that, and I also moved the school board direct the superintendent to, and there are a couple bullets, but then this one, include plans for the Career Center campus in the FY 2023-34 CIP addressing 1, phase 2, which will refresh the existing ACC building for MIPSA and open in fall 2028. And 2, phase 3, which will demolish the existing MPSA building and be replaced by a new field and or open space with work commencing after the fall of 2028. So that was the intent of the school board, the CIP that was passed that starts the funding for this project. But that is a follow-on project.
And they reiterated at schematic design, similar language.
So it's just to let you know the question of what is in the CIP that was approved. That was what was approved.
And we did already start a study, as I had mentioned, with regard to review. And we do have a commitment to a maximum number of students on that campus. So that is actually in record.
But as you said a moment ago, that maximum could use all 3 buildings.
It could, but again, what the board has said to this point, what the board has said to this point, I mean, I have to go with that. I can't say what they're going to do or when they're going to do it, but I think they've made an indication of the direction that we're going. And we've actually started work in that direction. Until it's in the CIP, I can't say we're doing it. Other than what they've said.
Okay.
And the CIP, they can make modifications, but I wouldn't think they would, but I am speaking as an opinion.
Sorry, so when you said in the CIP, you mean, does that
The
mean money
APS CIP,
allocated?
correct.
So what they voted on for the motion was, what would you call that? Placeholder?
Okay. Anything else with regards to construction phasing? Do we have any public speakers or anyone signed up for public speaking?
Well,
Hang on. Has anyone signed up for public speaking? Public comment? No, not yet. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Oh, there is
I
one.
didn't-
No,
yeah.
we're not at that, sorry, we're not
Okay,
at that point yet, but we will have at least one public speaker. Okay, just wanted to get a sense for timing.
Ask one question about the phasing.
Okay.
And that is communication with the neighboring streets and the apartment complex across the street. Have you started thinking about that and letting them know about how they'll be impacted with the different things as part of the plan for these different phases?
We typically do that, Ted, as part of our construction plans. I mean, there's going to be some county involvement in doing that too, for example, with the water line work. So there's a combination, but certainly for our construction activities that impact the neighbors, we'll outreach.
But there are elements of outreach in the use permit condition requirements. I don't have those in front of me right now, but it's, we generally will specify the civic associations that are affected with what information needs to be provided provided, along with if there are specific large residential buildings, we'll enumerate those too.
Usually there's an identified point of contact for construction concerns or kind of like, oh, that's you, congratulations. I'm sorry, you had a question.
It's kind of a comment / question. Sure. So if I'm understanding the phasing correctly, the existing field space that ACC has been using goes away in January of 26, and they do not get field space back until August of 27.
That is correct.
So I don't know, is there consideration what happens? We have no space again for PD during that time?
You have a standard size gym.
You will have a new gym.
You will have it, well, for part of it, you'll have a gym, but during the building construction, you
Correct.
have neither field nor gym.
Currently, though, the field is unusable.
Well, it's being used.
Well,
But
they use it. It's not
But
great.
no, it's terrible. And it's not really, it's not really usable with concrete plots and asphalt and stuff like that. So they can't use it to the extent that they would otherwise. And so the kids
We have
are
a small
kind of
box,
used to it.
and we have,
Yeah.
we're very creative.
Getting shades of the Hunger Games.
Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to raise was, we talked a lot at the last meeting about ADA and accessibility and parking spaces, and I don't see marked anywhere here any information about that. I don't know if that's a different process. And then I also have a question about where all those accessible spaces are at different phases in the construction. So it feels like it would have to move around. And I want to make sure we're giving consideration to that and making sure we maintain that accessibility at every phase. And I don't see it marked here at all, so I want to make sure we're thinking about it.
Yeah, every phase of the project where we are providing parking, our parking has to provide ADA spaces to the percentage of how many spaces we provide. We are still in conversation with the county with regard to street side accessible spaces. All of that is still under conversation, but by the time we get to the use permit, they will be identified.
That would be good information to have on the phasing slides when it comes to.
Yeah, that's a good point. We don't
Yeah,
have
when
it
it
on
comes to
there.
planning commission.
Well, and we not only need accessible parking, but you also need accessible pickup and drop off. That was one of the things that happened when Fleet was built, was there was no accessible curbside pickup and drop off. And so we had to, go back and petition APS to remedy that, but it took 8 months or so and was quite inconvenient for the students who needed that during that time period. So I want to make sure we're not just thinking about surface accessible parking, but also accessible pickup and drop off during every phase.
Well, I think with Fleet, the intent was to pick up and drop off in the garage, but it didn't work out or pan out the way we had anticipated. So we did make that modification, and we have, that's one of the reasons why we're having the conversation. Street side.
Yes. Okay. I think at this point, if there's no other covered items for the construction phasing piece, I'd like to do a quick round robin to let people give final thoughts, and then we will go to our one public speaker. Thank you. Chrissy, do you want to start?
Just that I would like to see, again, I think two major things are, I would like to see streetscaping right now for the entire corner of South Highland and South 7th. I think you can do that now without worrying about what eventually is going to happen to that space there, and I think it's appropriate to do it now, especially, I know there's 6-foot fence next to a very narrow sidewalk. I'm very concerned about a 6-foot fence going around that corner. I think it's very unwelcoming. I think it's inconsistent with every other APS playground. My understanding is that every APS playground except for one in Roslyn is 4 feet. And so I don't think in this residential neighborhood you need a 6-foot fence there. And I think it's very unwelcoming and doesn't look good. And I think it also says something that it's not nice for it to say. And I would also like, again, I understand the issues that are being brought up about the use permit, but I would like more sound understanding about the use permit and the final condition and possibilities of at least labeling this a temporary condition so that everybody understands what's going to happen in the future. Because when this is proposed final condition, at the end of this, I think it doesn't follow. If everything happens like we think it's going to happen, I think it's going to be great. But having 3 schools, very limited green space, I think for the entire site is not, you know, I don't think people are going to be very happy with that in the long run. So I would love to see a proposed final condition with 2 buildings, more green space, or biophilic spaces.
All right, thank you. Sorry, your turn?
I think I expressed most of my comments. I do want to say I really did appreciate the addition of showing the buses and how the space works. I'm glad to hear you're thinking about the accessible spaces. It would be great to see more conversation about what that looks like during the construction period. I am curious, I know you said that the Montessori pickup and drop off remains the same. I don't know though, once we have to reconfigure all the buses to come in off South Highland, if there are going to be any conflicts with pickup and drop off and having the parent cars and the buses at the same time. So that's just one additional thing I would like to highlight for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and also what Christy said, we do not want a final condition with 3 buildings.
Understood.
We're just very excited that things are going to happen. We've had a lot of, a step forward and then 5 steps back. So, and it looks very promising with outdoor space. The outdoor space looks great. We can't wait till we get to that final point of a full-size field. But the fact that of having a usable building with library, a proper gym, proper cafeteria will be amazing for the career center students. And it's something to look forward to. And if it does start, like if there's signs that things are going to start in 2 weeks, then that's incredible.
I think I said my things, but I do have to thank the staff. I mean, this has just really been, we've come so far. And then a little caveat, it will be very interesting. I hope, at our next meeting, we can hear more on some of these issues that are been identified and stuff.
I'm going to pass to.
I'm going to pass as well.
Okay.
Like there's still a fair amount of work to do before Transportation Commission and Planning Commission, but the site's come a long way. I look forward to it.
Super excited.
Very exciting. One question that I didn't ask tonight that I'd love to be able to push to the next meeting session is talking about materials and thinking about safety and thinking about curtain and what that means to safety. I don't even know what my question is at this point, but I wonder if there's a discussion.
Talking about like the glass.
Yeah, and like active shooter concern.
Yeah, we have policies and procedures of what we do. I mean, laminated safety glasses on our lower levels because that doesn't break and fall out of the frame. It's a false sense of security to say that we have bulletproof glass, and it's also financially prohibitive because which gun do you try to stop? Because depending, your glass gets thicker. You can get to 1 foot thick and stop certain guns. So yes, you can ask us those questions. if you have those questions. And I wanted to make a thanks to everybody for the comments made at last meeting. They really gave us a direction and make sure that we focused on some certain things, which really helped us pull some things together as we're doing two things. We're working towards the use permit and we are working towards finalizing our design development phase because, you know, if we're going to have this thing out to bid the end of 2023, we have a lot of work to do, as you said, even beyond the Transportation Commission, and we are well aware of that. And the input has been very beneficial and helped us focus on certain. Thank you for that.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, virtual people, any wrap-up comments? I see a hand raised.
Alyssa.
Yes, hello, this is
Hi, Alyssa. You're up.
I'm a newer member of the PFRC and also happen to be a neighbor just over on Irving Street. And just want to compliment the design team. I'm especially on the architecture, being an architect myself. I'm so excited to see a non-traditional Arlington building going up, and appreciate how much you've taken into consideration with the various terraces and student experience and getting opinions from the students themselves as well. So thank you.
Anyone else in the PFRC attending virtually who has a final wrap-up comment? Okay, we're going to move to public comment now. Sir, you have 3 minutes and introduce yourself and then take it away.
Thank you. I'm Brian Sigwards. I'm currently serving as co-president of Arlington Heights Civic Association, so serving with Christy. Been a resident of Arlington for almost 20 years, and I was before involved in a couple other fiscal affairs advisory committee and audit committee. So new to this formal process, but I've been following this project for a long time, as well as many other people in our neighborhood and community. I would say I think there's a letter that's passed around, and I believe I emailed it to some of you as well. If you need more hard copies, or if you'd like me to email to you, please let me know. That kind of explains where we're coming from with the Arlington Heights Association. Arlington Heights has more APS schools than any other neighborhood. We've long been supportive of APS. But I think there is a feeling within our neighborhood of, being burned in the past, especially with some of the decisions with fleet. And there is a lot of concern about this final condition and what's going to happen. And there is, I would say this, a degree of distrust of, what will actually take place. So I'd like to echo some of the comments Christy made, concerns about the final condition. One, ensure this green space. I'm sure there's only 2 buildings remain in place. That corner there of 7th and Highland, definitely concerns with that area as well too, as far as the streetscaping, sidewalk. Some concern about the parking garage too, but I would say overall our main concerns are, the final condition, what's actually going to happen, what's going to happen with the current Montessori or the old Patrick Henry building, that there's only 2 buildings, that we have enough green space. Finally, our neighborhood, Arlington Heights and Penrose as well, really uses, those current green spaces. It's not just a school. People are over there in the playgrounds, they're playing ball in the field. So, some of the apartment buildings right across the street there in Walter Reed, that's their main green space area. That current site. There's, kids out there a lot. So we want to ensure that there's enough green space in the final condition. That doesn't remain. The Montessori School and the Career Center in those 3 buildings. If anyone has any questions, or feel free to. My email address is on there, so I'm always happy to answer questions. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. 1 minute to spare. Thanks, everyone. Next meeting, May 17th. Okay.
Will that be just the PFRC or?
I believe so. As planned, just PFRC.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Good night.
I'm not hearing from you.